Last week we had a demo from Mike about profiles. We talked about 1.5, about translations, we didn't talk about YesSql, we talked about cards versus tabs, and we looked at this PR today. I assume we have demos.
Yes, I would have one about GitHub Actions.
Solid. Yes. And I will write it down, GitHub Actions, because otherwise next week I will be like, what was the demo about? Do you have another demo?
Next week you can just say, was there a demo? Yes.
No other demo. Topics. So last week we didn't talk about YesSql. We will still talk about 1.5. We'll talk about translations. Okay, and maybe something else. Let's check issues and PRs just because some of them need feedback, so I want to talk about that meeting. So we'll watch the meeting offline and give feedback also. Late. Is late. Status 4 and 1. There has been some things merged. We were 27, which means here I'm just looking at that. Logon crash when checking if password is expired. Fixing a crash because of a null value, because database migration, so initialization is not good. So now it's checking that the value exists before taking it. This could be null. On record. $27 here. The PR meeting, and then there. This one, all contributors CLI update. See set HttpContext before using ShellScope in unit test. Okay. Just test updates. Test. Remove the min hide on multiple select. We merged it, so change makes sense. Update fix CulturePickerOptions. Look, okay. Date fix bug report template labeled bug. Wow, nice bug. Everything.
There was a bug in the bug template by the bug emoji not being there after the label bug. You can get more bugs than that.
Update again the same day? No, that was a day. CultureInfo should be independent from local computer setting. Oh, okay, yeah, I approved this PR. So now there is a setting. So just a reminder, if you configure on Windows the local settings for culture, then ASP.NET will use these settings when it loads the culture of the same record. This option is to say, ignore the settings from the system or the customization from the system, just use whatever the culture says it should do, not the customization. So that's how to do that, to ignore the customizations at the OS level. Or at the OS level that administrators will do. Or maybe default VMs, default images have. So this way it will be the same result, whatever the computer you're running, whatever the customization. This is not the default. The default is to use the system values, and the default is set in ASP.NET. Then the default request localization option is loaded and goes into the method like this, new CultureInfo, and it says yes. And now what we do is take from the setting. Okay. And also related to that, Isham filed an issue. ASP.NET Core. I can ask a new option method constructor on the request localization options class that will say that we can change from configuration perspective when we go to the because what he had to do in Orchard was to create a new implementation of this class and copy paste the code from this class to be able to change that. That change in ASP.NET, this class will go away. You can then use the standard one, the constructor. So that's good. And that's in API review, which means on Monday, it will be discussed, be in .NET 8 or not, because if it comes, search now, then it will be in .NET 8 in a year. That's how long you have to wait to have something changed, even if it's not breaking. Because this won't be merged to .NET 7 as a service release, because it's API, it's a new API, so break. How it works. So that's the PR change. So now it's working, the setting, and there is documentation, I believe. So the documentation, right? Or the documentation is just okay. Kind of sad, but that's another thing. Raise the shell context when site settings are outdated. Talked about it. Just a question of when to do that in the driver or not. So it's on the driver. When you change a site setting, then it will mark the shell to be restarted when the site settings is updated. Good. What's next? Demo. Done.
Yes. So let me start screen sharing, and also let me share a link in the chat window. So we are talking about GitHub Actions and extensions that make a lot of things very easy in an Orchard Core project or Orchard Core based application project with GitHub Actions. Now, if you don't know GitHub Actions or aren't entirely clear on the terminology, GitHub Actions is GitHub's automation platform or CI/CD platform. Orchard Core, of course, also uses it to run various builds. And how you define a build pipeline, or well, it's really not just about builds, but anything automated. How you define a pipeline there is by creating a so-called workflow, or so-called actions. Workflows are what are actually run, and actions are something that you can add on your own as well. These are things that workflows can call. Kind of like a workflow is like a program, and an action is like a library that your program calls into. And of course, actions can be third-party as well. The point here is that, well, you can use GitHub Actions to automate a lot of things, chiefly something like .NET builds and running tests and doing various verification on a pull request. And you can also do all kinds of modularization between these builds. And what we have here, this Lombiq GitHub Actions project, is a lot of what GitHub Actions calls reusable workflows and composite actions for Orchid core applications. The workflows that you can call from your own workflows, pretty much almost like one-liners to like run the .NET build and execute tests of an Orchid core application. And actions are the little building blocks that you can also use if you just want to have something specific. And we have quite a lot of workflows and actions here. Everything is also documented. What I would like to point out is this build and test Orchid core solution workflow. And pretty much this is how you use it. It's not even a minimal usage, actually. It can be even shorter. Pretty much this can be your GitHub Actions workflow in your own repository, in the repository with an Orchid core application, where you execute the workflow that we provide here. And this is actually used in Orchid core commerce as well. So if you check out the GitHub/workflows folder there, this is all the code that's necessary to run such builds. Oh, well, this is a failing one. Let's see one that is passing, yeah, from an older merged pull request. Let's check out the details. And yeah, as you can see, there are builds for Ubuntu and Windows as well. I wasn't picking on Gabor, Sebastian. And these are all the automated checks that we run there. This is a quite long build because it's not just a .NET build, which happens here, but it also runs all kinds of static code analysis. It also runs a command to verify that all the NuGet packages in all the .NET projects of the solution are consolidated, so the same packages use the same versions in all projects. And it also runs unit and UI tests with SQL Server and Azure Storage, actually. So you can set up something like this very quickly. In our open source Orchid core extensions Orchid solution, which contains, as you may have guessed, all of our Orchid core extensions, we have something like this as well. It's a bit more complicated. You can see we also have 2 jobs here in GitHub Actions terminology, because we actually built 2 solutions, not just one. And it's not just about Orchid core builds, actually. It's also about some other automation, like publishing to NuGet. So back to Orchid core commerce, we also have NuGet publishing, well, NuGet publishing to NuGet.org, and also NuGet publishing to how is it called? Cloudsmith, the provider Cloudsmith for all the nightly builds. We have 2 such workflows. Again, just very little. Everything is provided by our GitHub Actions project. And if you want to check out how these are implemented, you are welcome to do. It's all open source. And actually, how the whole thing started was by Dean. Dean was the developer who initially created publish NuGet. Well, I think it was a workflow at the time, not an action. So it still bears some of his work here. Otherwise, here's the code It does a lot of things, not just the NuGet publish command. And this is how we publish, well, Orchard Core Commerce. So if you like to quickly add some automated checks or automated NuGet publishing to your Orchard Core-based project, check out this. Everything is easily usable here, documented, lots of examples. So hopefully it will be useful for somebody else as well.
Thank you. I left the blank this way for the editing when you share the video. Easier. The question, so what are the conventions? Because if there is no argument, there must be a lot of conventions, like what's the CS approach name, what the folder it will build, how the test will run.
Yes. By default, these use or just do what the .NET command line already does, which in the case of NuGet publishing, for example, is that if there is a CS proj in the folder, then it will publish that. If there is a solution file, it will publish all the CS proj or all the C# projects referenced by the solution. And if there are multiple project files without the solution, it will throw an error. But otherwise, all the arguments or all the parameters are defined as inputs like this. The defaults should be good enough for almost everyone and almost every case, but everything that we thought about that's useful to be customized is customizable as well.
What is GitHub ref name?
This one. I think this is the Git reference, right?
Does it match the branch name?
Not necessarily. Oh yeah, this is the Git reference that triggered this workflow. So it might be a branch name if you configure the workflow to trigger based on a branch or push to a branch. What we usually do is not that actually, but what you can also see here in Orchard Core Commerce is that we are awaiting a tag push, a tag with the prefix v as in version. So yeah, that way you can have.
What I decided. Thank you. That's what you used. I like it. We started it in. I'm not sure we started it in Orchard. Why did we start it? I should check.
Orchard Core does something like that as well. A lot of projects use this convention.
Yeah. Good. Good.
Yeah, thank you.
So, and now I want to see what websites you are building with Orchard Commerce.
I really hope that we'll be able to demonstrate it. We start with a smaller web shop, a catalog and Stripe payments. But I think we'll be able to demonstrate it in probably 1-2 months.
Right. Can we buy music with that?
Sorry?
Can we buy music?
That's not that one, unfortunately. But folk-based recordings will have something in the e-commerce space as well. It's about cookies.
Okay.
But I can't tell anything more yet.
I like cookies. So it's a competitor to Rumble Cookie or something. Well, here in the States it's famous, but I don't know what you're doing. Okay, good, good. Thank you. I will know more. Fine, thanks. Good. Next, I will share my screen. Topics, YesSql, because that's the order and we have time. YesSql, there is a PR in this time. There is a PR. This one to update YesSql because I did some changes here. New version 3.10. So what's new in 3.10? The previous version was 3.0.12. Now it's 3.10 because big changes. Add schema to SQL Server and PostgreSQL dialect by Jasmin. ListPart is adding the schema option. Do we have examples here? And we find examples in the test. Robotic? I don't know.
Oi, bem-vindos de volta. Queria outro lugar? Sim.
That's me.
Eu estou aqui para proteger a linha.
I can't click. Crap. What's happening? Who is that? Okay. So there is a test here. Oh, baby Yoda. So now when you go use whatever, you can pass a schema optionally on your database that will be created automatically if it doesn't exist yet. So this way, you can create tenants, I will say in Orchard, that will have the standard table names without any prefix, but use a different schema. So in SQL Server, for instance, the default schema is DBO, but you can create another one in the same database and have all your, it's like a namespace for tables. So PostgreSQL supports that, SQL Server supports that, SQLite doesn't support it, and we even if, well, maybe it supports, I don't know, but we don't care about SQLite because it's a file, so which I can just create a new file to isolate tables. And MySQL doesn't support that. Postgres and SQL Server, you can now the schema as a configuration option, and then all the tables will be created in this schema. Again, the schema is created automatically if it doesn't exist when you initialize the database. SQL. So that's super nice. Obviously, it's not backward compatible. So by default, you don't call it and there will be no schema defined in all the table calls. If you are using SQL Server, you can set DBO. It will work because this is the default schema. So that's about that for this change. So I suggested the PR, but this PR doesn't do that. But I suggested on the chat that we should add an option in Orchard in the setup screens to ask for a table prefix or and both a schema if the database selected is Postgres or SQL Server. This way, you can create new tenants, but with the same table name. So for scripting the site, it will be much better because you can use the same database script, but just change the default schema that is used for the script, like use schema DBO or use schema whatever when you do the script. That must be super useful. What else? Don't reuse document cross sessions. So there was a bug reported a while ago about concurrency issues. The issue is that if you do concurrent updates with the same document, then there might be a problem with the query gating. So query gating is a feature that not pipelines, but multiplex, to say that. If you have the same query happening at the same time for two different clients, YesSql will only issue one query and give the same result to both clients. In the case of concurrent updates, so these are just for selects, but in the case of concurrent updates, two threads might get the same document and update the same document at the same time, and there might be a thread safety issue at the C# level, not even database level. And this user, Javier, provided a repro for that, and Sergio also had the same issue. So it doesn't happen much, I'd say, in Orchard. I haven't seen that in Orchard because Orchard is read intensive. There isn't like lots of requests doing updates on the same document concurrently. So Sergio is not using Orchard in this case with YesSql. I don't know for Javier. They work together, actually. Spanish name. So it's not very important for us, but yet it's fixed in this version. The issue was that, let's look at the change. The issue was that when we do a query, it's returning a document instance, okay, document class instance, and this document class instance was cached in a local identity map. So two different sessions with their own identity map might get the same document, which will then be updated. So now whenever such a query is executed, it's cloning the document. So each of the sessions have a distinct document. And the document is just, let's see here, document is just an ID type of document, the string content, and the version. So this is super light because it's just a new POCO and the content is a string, so the reference will be shared. And then it's deserialized as required. So it's a cheap change and effective. So that's the fix. I fixed the MySQL datetime offset serialization issue. I don't know why, but it's a test that will fail on my computer and not on GitHub Actions. I have no idea why, but I still fixed it locally. Yeah, the time zone of the datetime offset was not serialized correctly in MySQL. So I created a custom handler to say how it should be stored. It's stored as before in the string database, but using the O standard. It's an ISO one that also stores the offset of the time zone.
Don't you need to specify a culture provider to toString because it perhaps uses a different culture?
Not with O. Maybe that was an issue before because my computer is in English and maybe the GitHub action is in something different. I don't know. And that's why it was working there, not on mine. But if I look at, when I looked at the database, that's weird because it was not storing the time zone. So the test, if you want to look at the test, so the test I'm doing to be sure that datetime offset can be stored for every database is that I create a custom datetime offset with a custom time zone, like 1 hour, 2 minutes, and 3 seconds, something like that, the time zone. And then I expect when I read again the datetime offset from database that it has this exact time zone. It's not converted, it's not closed. And O is culture independent. That's from the documentation of the O format. It's culture independent, so it will work on any culture. And it's not lost anymore. That's at least fixed. So when it's passing back the string into datetime offset, it's a standard format, so it's parsed correctly by .NET. The issue was on the serialization, there was a data loss on my computer, not on GitHub Actions. I have no idea why. I'd love to figure out why, but it was faster to just fix it. The rest is just traumatic. And the last one, update dependencies, a very important change. Update dependencies. Told you, Antoine, I had created the PR already for that, but the version have changed. Then, so updated dependencies, PostgreSQL 601 to 607, I should bug fixes. SQL client, a huge release because they removed a lot of code, made perf better. And there's a breaking change since 4.0 that I won at that time. That's why we didn't update, but now it's done. The breaking change is that by default, the encrypt property is true, which means it will ensure that the connection to the database server and SQL server is TLS, is using HTTPS, is secured, okay, encrypted. If it's not, it will fail the connection. So if your SQL server is not configured with a certificate, then your current connection, if it doesn't say encrypt false, will fail. So when you update to this version of Orchard, which uses this version of YesSql, then if you're on Azure, that's fine. You don't need to change encrypt false because Azure connections are encrypted by default. But if you have a local instance of SQL Server that is not configured with the certificate, then you will need to do encrypt forms in your connection string, which is a minor change to do in your setup. It's an easy one to do. That and MySQL connector was also updated, I believe, on the other PR. I updated the test because I'm not sure if GitHub Actions is using an encrypted connection in the Docker image, probably not. And it will still work even locally. Have to. Good. So that's today's last change. And this PR that is updating to 3.10, which is shit. It's blocking on the schema which is required in some API calls. So I just suggested to Isham, just when the schema is requested in a table, just pass configuration schema or null. I prefer to pass that, otherwise it won't work. Well, if you pass null right now, it will work without any schema in the setup. But when we want to support the schema, then we need to remove that value and use configuration the schema because it will be set setup. There is a new version of YesSql that will come right after that, which is from this PR. It's green. Yeah, it's green. I just did a change this morning. It was already working before, but I did a change this morning with this thing, which is a support, well, actual PR. This one, support long ints. Currently, YesSql is using an int32 in the database and in the models to add the identifier, an int. Okay? It's an integer identifier with 32 bits. So this is limited, okay, because there is a limit, the max value of integers, and some people have reached the max number of IDs you can get. So there have been some PRs in the past to update that, but I did my own in another way with a backward compatible way. So what it does is it's a mix of this PR and the one I just passed this morning here, because there is something here. So the document now has a long ID. Okay? Int 64. There is this option which is now not called like that anymore. It's changed it in this PR. It's called identity column size. The configuration, there is an identity column size, which default value is int32. And that's why I wanted to make this PR such that if you use 3.2.0 of YesSql, it will be the same default as before, so it won't break anything. It will break some things in your code, but not YesSql itself is not breaking per se. Show you this one. So here,
what are the available values for that, you know? Is it just int and
32, int 64, the default being int 32, like, and it has to be an integral value. Talked about it last week, because it can't be a string, it can be a GUID. A GUID, why I say it can't be a GUID? Because technically it could be a GUID.
should be able to make it GUID.
Wait. Yeah, that's a good point. So I shouldn't see between last week and now. Why did I say last week that it could not be a GUID? Just because I wanted it to be compatible?
Yeah, I think so. But I mean, if you make it enum
I
by
see.
default, then
Yes, because last week it was a Boolean like legacy or not legacy. And now if I make an enumeration, we could also support width. Interesting.
does that only apply to the ID column in the document, or does it also apply into the index ID columns?
Yes, it has to match all the.
Well, yeah, the document ID and the ID
Yes.
of these match, but I mean the index, the ID column of the actual index, it doesn't
This will,
have to match.
it doesn't have to match, but this will also be applied there because
Perfect.
why not?
Yeah, why not? I was just curious.
If you want your physical identifier to be of a type, I assume you want all your tables to have the same one.
Agreed. I was just wondering.
Okay.
That's
So for perf reasons, I believe integer is better, an integral value is better than a GUID. I believe it can't be slower than a GUID. It can only be as fast or faster. The nice thing, so the main difference between integer and a GUID in terms of usage is that a GUID, you can generate it on client side and you know it's unique. You know it's unique. So when you send the upsert command, then you know that there won't be any conflict. With an integer, you need to know what was the last value on the server to be able to generate the next value. Or you need to issue a statement and the insert of the update, and you get the new value on the client. So when you create your instance on your client, you don't know what will be the ID until you've inserted it in the database. With a GUID, you can know the ID before you send it to the database. That's an advantage of the GUID. But in YesSql, there is no such a disadvantage for integers because it's using a high-low algorithm to lease a range of integers for a specific client. So it knows that it can issue integers up to like 200. And then once it has reached 200, it will ask the database for another range of 20 values. And it will say, OK, I can issue IDs from 201 to 220. So we know what IDs are available, or at least we can lease a range for each client. So we are sure that nobody else will be able to create the same identifier as us. So that's the way we fix the fact that we need to know the ID before we send it to the database. So a GUID will not have this issue, but that's a different DB ID generator that's already abstracted. So that's doable. We need to change. Following this PR, you will see that in the schema builder, there is an argument that says that specifies also the identity colon type. And then in 64, in 32, not this one. And then, yeah, we could also then be able to support documents with string.
So you're going to add support for string as well?
I won't. You can send a PR and see why it's not working.
Okay.
Because maybe I'm missing something because it's oh yeah one issue is that you see everything internally is done with long values. So if you're using integer, you just wrap it in long. If you're using long, we just use a long. Fine. So you see some of the things are not abstracted away from the string. Still doable, but yeah, it needs some structures to be changed. But technically, I'm pretty sure it's doable. So the perf might change a bit, or there might be some more checks. This is your PR, I hope. Yeah. It's different. Okay, all right. It's also fixing some other refactoring issues. So that's the one that I'm going to merge. Screen. And I will release a YesSql version with that. So this PR is just changing the default now to be int32. The previous PR that was merged was using int64 as default. Now I decided to use an int32 as default to be backward compatible and to ship it as a 3.2. A 4.0 version of YesSql would use the int64 by default. That is all for YesSql. That's the changes, upcoming changes. Next topic, 1.5, I believe, unless something happens. We still have this one open. I filed a PR. It would fix it, but apparently Chantieri worked on it. Says yes. Do you think the GitHub issue is not an actual issue, but a misunderstanding of what the permissions represent? So apparently it's working as expected, and what we think the permission means doesn't mean that. So manage media doesn't mean manage all the media. It means, oh, you can create a folder in the media. So that's why manage own media needs manage media, because to manage your own media, you need to be able to create folders in this thing. We'll talk about it longer on Thursday, because I need to know if we need to close the issue or file a different issue. And if we take this PR, what is it breaking? Apparently this PR, which is just removing the implicit permission, maybe this PR would break the manage own media permission or feature, because you will not be able to access that thing, your own folder. So that's the last thing to do for 1.5. What else? 5 translations. Last week we talked about issues about limits.
Question about 1.5, sorry. Do we have an approximate ship date? I know there is no rush, but I'm just wondering.
Oh, there is a rush. We are super late. We are supposed to ship every 2 months. This one, we need to close this one to understand. Okay. If it's taking too long, we'll just ship this way because it was working for most people in 1.4. We think it's a misunderstanding. So on Thursday, we decide what we do with that and then what we do with 1.4.
Okay, there's also a couple PRs with like small bug fixes.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you want me to send them to you, you can look at them or something like that. But
and you can remind us on
Thursday. Okay.
Focus on 1.5.
Okay.
So what have I seen? Translations. Last week we talked about the limitations we were hitting, and Antoine found the magic form to ask to be categorized as an open source project and not a free project. And apparently we don't have the limit anymore. So problem solved. Thank you, Antoine. Is it done already? Or yeah, I think it's done, right?
I did not update the strings yet, but we don't have a limit anymore.
Access the file. Last week we found it. We said 21,695. We counted the
resources. Oh, content. Please.
Yeah, but how do we see if there are limits?
That was an alert.
Okay. I didn't see the alert, so I see. Okay, but you don't see the alert anymore.
No.
That's good. Okay, awesome. Thank you. Issues PR. Yes, so
there is one issue we talked about last week. We said we're going to discuss it this week. I don't know if you want to tackle that one.
That's the point of this point. So which one are the
issue 11870? I can provide summary just so to prevent time wasting if you want. So there's a request to be able to create a way in the default tenant to manage other tenants, like manage their features, import recipes on their behalf, and things like that. And so there's a PR for that. But then I think Zoltan and Jasmine mentioned something about, well, we should move these features into a different tenant other than default that is responsible for managing other tenants. So that way the management portion of it goes to another tenant than default. And so the issue that I had with that, it's completely different than this current PR, because this PR, or in today's world, everything is managed in the default tenant unless we change the entire infrastructure to move that away from default. Currently, everything sits in the default tenant. So I guess we're not sure which path should we take here to allow admin of the SaaS environment to be able to manage other tenants.
What's the, yeah, trying to understand. I didn't see that. Trying to understand why is it better to have a different tenant? I mean, it can only be better to be able to choose which tenant can manage your tenants. Like, is it worth complexity? Because
I mean, so there is sense to it. I mean, if we think about it, maybe you want the main tenant that manages others to be offline somehow, or like used to be able to I don't know, instead of a UI, some other, or that specific domain to be available internally or something for security reasons. But you know, in today's world, default is how we manage other tenants. That's how we add, that's how we suspend, that's how we do things like that.
Yeah, for security reasons, it's just more secure to have it only on the default tenant, because not everyone can access the default tenant.
True.
Being able to stop it, well, you can stop the feature if you really want nobody to be able to do that, not just a tenant. Even if it's in a different tenant, you can stop the feature. Even if it's on the default tenant, you can stop the feature. If it's a feature, let's see. Secure independently for sure, but some more secure. It's just independent. It's just more flexibility. Question is it possible to do it more flexible? Because today there are some things that we check only the default tenant, the tenant name default, can do things. And I assume that's blocking it from making it in a different tenant, because then we have to check, or is this tenant a special tenant that can manage other tenants? And we don't rely on the notion of default tenant anymore. There is no such thing as a default tenant anymore. It's a tenant that can manage tenants. So that would be the first thing to do actually before putting this feature in a different tenant. So we need to remove the notion of default tenant. There is no more default tenant if we do that. So I see in terms of features, it should be only useful if you want to do batch changes, because as Zoltan is mentioning, well, you can always access, well, you could access the admin from the tenant directly. I have this experience personally where to be able to do that, I need to create a custom account on each of the tenants as a super admin and authenticate in each of these tenants to be able to do a change on each tenant. So that's painful. So is this module fixing that and making it that you don't need to authenticate?
No, it's using an existing user account.
What, sorry?
No, it's using an existing user account. So it does need an administrator account on that tenant too.
But when you say an existing user account on each tenant?
Yes.
Does it
So
does
you,
it
so you
pull
have to
up
create it.
the super admin? Maybe just impersonate the super admin, maybe.
Oh yeah, not a new one, but an existing one. So pretty much, well, you will have a super user after setup for sure.
What are you saying? So tenant 1, tenant 2. Okay. Default. So let's say tenant 1 as admin 1, because I created the tenant with admin 1 and this one as admin 2. I call it differently because I could call them admin and admin. They are technically two different accounts, okay? But be sure I have that. So I'm on default and I'm logged with admin. So with your feature here, I can go in tenant 1 as admin 1.
Yes.
And say, or like Jack.
Yes.
And create some content and say, Jack, you created some content?
Yes.
Well, that's definitely something we won't do because that breaks every security boundary that we can put in place.
Yeah, that's impersonation.
So I don't even want to talk about it. I haven't heard anything. We should remove that from there. So you should be clear about this is a different feature. So I do whatever you want, right? But I don't think we should have something like that. That's super nice. What I did in the web logs is that I created something called superadmin. I created another account superadmin. I have the same credentials for both of them, and I have to go on each tenant authenticating at that. So I'm not saying Jack created a content. Superadmin created the content. It's not Jack, because I don't know who Jack is. I don't know his credentials, and I can't impersonate as them. You can tell me, yes, if you have access to database, you can do whatever you want database and say Jack did that. But superadmin doesn't have access to database. It has access to the dashboard and can do stuff that an admin can do. Doesn't mean it cannot change what Jack did. So, so it's technically it works for me. But I like Mike's idea that here I have superadmin or tenant admin, whatever, or admin, and I can go there. What I can't do though is create content because only a user can create content. This user here is not created there, so it won't be able to create content. But at least it could manage features and everything. Or is that the same concern that we need a permission? In terms of audit trail.
So with the PR that I put in, basically we're running the features module in a given tenant context.
It's just to enable disable in this case. That's all you need to do.
Correct.
Interesting. That's limited set of features, so it's better because I was concerned about like how do you create content, how do you run recipes and everything for a tenant that might be other in terms of tracking. If it's just disabling feature, then it's a bulk, and that's something I like because that's something I even created a feature which was a command. I could run a command on all the tenants, and the command would be like some sort of recipe. So I could say enable feature A, and it will run on all the tenants, but it's a solid thing or text-based thing. So yeah, no, I think it's reasonable to say like you have in the default tenant where you manage the tenants, you could check the ones you want or select and then pick the features you want to enable, even if it's all the tenants. So it's better if you have a checkbox set up. tenants. Yeah, I don't think it should be in a different module. Or we need to change what a default tenant is before, because we don't want personation. So it's recorded. People, please comment. Or if I missed another comment that explains why it's wrong,
I mean, the argument is just should we allow the default tenant to do this kind of management, or should we move it to a different tenant? I think that's where the argument. And I personally say right now we do everything in default, so we put it in default. If in the near future or far future we decided we're going to split the default and create another tenant that does only management, well, this feature will be moved along with the other features, right? But I think right now, just because everything is done in default, should stay in default until the core foundation changed. I think that's where the main argument here.
So I'm okay to keep the feature in default right now and not change what default is. If we want to do it in another tenant later, we need first to change what a default tenant is. Not call it default tenant, but call it like super tenant that can create and manage other tenants. And it can be anything, any tenant, or change the name of the default tenant. Like it's not default, but it can be tenant 1 tomorrow, and default can't manage other tenants anymore because it's named default, but another one, like crown a tenant to be the new manager of the tenants. So, another one, the last one, because we are over time. Do you have any feedback on the cards versus tabs?
No, we don't.
Nobody cares. So I win.
Nobody cares.
So it's just about who prefers tabs versus who prefers cards.
If you want to look at that last week, remember how I showed the demo for profile?
Oh,
yeah, I actually changed it to
okay. So let's not talk about
setting.
Nobody heard about profile. So my confusion last week is that should I search for profile?
No, sir. It's I changed it to settings. So let me tell you what's the issue. Hang on.
Just to get the number here.
Issue number 12520.
Sure here. Okay, so since last week now we talked about custom parts and everything. Now Mike did a change on the list part. So what I did is add a display mode, not to be able to configure the display mode part, but he created a display mode for this part.
So one correction, it's no longer a display mode. It's a settings on the list part. That's a key change. So you just show the header, or you don't need a header, then.
Oh, the navigation header here.
The top, above it, the profile header. Yep.
That and that.
Just the top, actually. The navigation, I kind of moved it from having it as buttons because the buttons can expand really long.
Okay, so it was there already, but there are new buttons too. It's different.
Yeah, well, it used to be, see where the search bar, there used to be buttons, 2 or 3 buttons right on the same line. And because they can grow, they can mess with the look of that search bar. So I thought I would move them up, and that would make things a lot easier.
Okay, so two things here. The change that and the setting here.
Yes.
If you could share a screenshot of what the list part looks like before this change, that would be nice to understand. Because it wasn't obvious to me. I thought it was new, and I didn't remember there were buttons here to edit the.
It was type. One to create and one to edit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We like buttons for actions like this instead of navigation, because here these are actions. Like, it's navigation, but you see edit, view, these are buttons. And this is now a link type of thing to edit and manage. So that's different. It's not filtering anymore. It's like, I'd like to see it and to understand.
Well, the buttons, they were actions. It's the same links, but instead of having...
but it's not the same UI design, the same UI language.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
All the edit buttons here are buttons. We don't click edit on a link today anywhere.
We can change the look there to be buttons instead of links on the navigation.
That's my concern, just not to disperse on many things. And then there is a first time for everything, and then nobody can say anymore, we can't do that, because there is always someone who did that differently. So the power of
I mean, the main concern with the buttons on the right next to the search, it grows and
maybe
interfere with the
but
looks.
if you like, if I want a button and it has to be on the right, I could have an edit here and a manage there, and still have the new filters on the left. If you want a different line, fine, but it's just, I'm sure, I don't think it's the best compromise. Maybe there is a different compromise between what was before and what's suggested here. And here I don't know, I don't remember, because I don't use Orchard at all. So I don't, I like to see it. And I'm sure some people would like to see it also, and didn't realize it was a change. Okay, so this PR is about changing how the buttons look like here. Navigation and action looks like for the content item that is a list. Example, a blog today is a list of blog posts. Here it's what is the type here? Let's say business. Okay. By thread is called content here. So content. And there could be a header here. So the idea is to be able, in a setting of the ListPart, to decide to display a header and the text of the header. Right? No, because it's running more somewhere. That's it.
If you refresh, I just posted.
You don't have to refresh it, refresh magically.
Yep, there you go. So you see the buttons right there?
Yeah, I like this button. So edit Docker Inc.
Well, you see that the edit ink currently, or Docker ink, that could be a long text, right? And so the longer it is, the longer it's going to take away from Docker, because that is the display text of the content item you're editing.
So Orchard Inc. here, is that the display text also?
Correct. That is the name of your content item.
So we could have the buttons here. Edit, create, sorry, edit.
I mean, I can replace a navigation with the button. So moving the buttons one row above, if you think that's more appealing.
Yeah, maybe the issue here is that the text should not be in the button. It should be a static text, static fixed size text, not with a display text. And I assume that we put the text here to prevent the confusion between what we are editing. Like, we are editing a blog, edit the blog itself and not anything that is contained. So that, yes, as long as the location of the tooltip is clear, we can remove the text here.
So you're suggesting maybe call it edit, whatever the display name of the content. So in this, if you look at my navigation, I actually changed it to edit content profile. Content profile is just a content type display name.
In Orchard one, I think it's called edit properties. But edit for me is just fine, as long as we know it's the list and not the items.
So you're suggesting to leave the buttons down there. Call it edit instead of edit display text. And then maybe add another button called manage. So you can.
What is manage already? I don't remember.
Say
what
that.
does manage do?
Well, that one lists all the sub items within the same. So just a list view. So if you're like, if you hit create right today, if you hit create,
Yeah, it's good to me.
there is no way to come back to the manage view. But having it part of a button, now you can actually navigate back. I think from navigation, like a user navigation, having a menu or a buttons across everything makes sense. Now I get the point that maybe navigation, maybe it's different.
What you mean is that if you click on the list, this navigation is still there. So you will be able to go back.
To today?
Because I see the list here. So when I show the admin view of a ListPart, example, a blog, I can see the list of blog posts, right? So I'm wondering, where is this button going then?
It just lists those. This is the page. So right now you're looking at the page that if you click on manage content, it will take you to this page. But see, the thing is that comes in handy if you click on edit content profile. Now you're on a different page.
If I click on edit content profile or edit blog, edit, it will go to the blog properties editor.
I'm sorry, say that again.
I use the blog because the blog is the thing that we have in every setup. Okay, so I won't use Orchard Inc. I won't use content profile or content or Docker Inc. I will use blog and blog post.
Okay.
When I click edit and I'm on the blog, I can edit the blog properties, which are the auto route.
Correct.
I don't know, image or whatever. Then if I click save or publish or whatever from the blog properties, it comes back to this page.
Correct.
Okay. If you
don't click save and you just wanted to go navigate back, currently there's no way to navigate back unless you hit back on your browser.
Or cancel.
Or cancel, correct.
So when you say there is no way to go back, I mean, you just said that if I click save, if I click cancel, if I go back, it goes back. How do you want to go back without doing that things?
You can just click on manage content and that will take you.
No. Forget about, you said manage content is new. I'm talking about today. What's the issue that manage content is solving today? I am lost. Like, if I edit, then I can go back. If I'm there, I'm there. If I click, is it when I click new then? When I click new blog post and I save, it doesn't go back there?
Well, if you click new, it will go back here. Yeah. But again, you would have to save or hit the buttons at the very bottom of the form. But you know, if you're on the top, right?
It's a breadcrumb that will also appear when you edit the blog post.
Yes, with the change, yes.
I see. That's not obvious here because this is new to show the list that it's already showing. I didn't realize that this header is also visible when I edit an item.
Yes, that navigation is available on absolutely everything. So it's easy to navigate back and forth.
So it's like the breadcrumb, right? That
in a way, yes, for that item or whatever the container is.
Then in this case, I would just add a link as you did here, but just this link on the items that are edited because this is the only thing that is missing today to go back, even though close or cancel also goes back. The same way when we are editing an article, there is no breadcrumb to say, oh, go back to the content item list. Just close and it goes back to the previous URL. Or you click back.
Yeah, so it'll be nice to have, if there's a return URL, to show a back button. Right, if you're using it on a mobile phone, right? Think about that. If you have a
Close.
button, you can easily click it.
That's the close button we have at the bottom right, or cancel or whatever.
Yeah, but you will have to scroll all the way down to hit that button, right?
So should we have one at the top of the editors or the editors, not just this one?
Well, if you hit new, that takes you to the edit or the create of the content, right? So even if you're not using ListPart, I'm just saying generally, it might be nice. Hey, if there's a return URL provided,
That's
show
my comment. Maybe we should do it even if it's not a ListPart.
right. Yeah, I think it's a
If
better
you say
user
the idea
experience.
is that because then we can have the same button, but at the top, like a fixed position. So like when we are on a mobile phone, there is always a cross on the top right to say close the form or close whatever. Maybe that's the same thing we should have. Because here it's very contextual to this part. I'm like, if we are solving the issue, let's solve it forever. If we agree about the issue, then we should solve it for all the forms if we don't want to scroll down, because the link is at the bottom right. If we want it at the top right also, I think Hisham did something like that at some point to add in the
I think here it's exceptionally important because just because you're in a container and you're managing items that belong to that container, right? Because that's what ListPart just provides you a way.
You want to keep the context.
Correct. So when you're navigating, you get the feel that you're still in the same context. You did not navigate away to a different page, right? So that's a concept behind having the navigation up, right? But then again, the main thing here is, now you have an option to show the header or remove the header. Well, by default, we don't show a header, but now with that setting field, you can just enable it and then it will show that header on the very top. And then you can also override that header with your template by creating your own custom template. And that will allow you to make it look appealing to you, right?
When you say a template, you mean any HTML, not a template, because it's a setting on the type part, like for each type of this part, I will have a different header, right?
Yes, but you can create your own content template, right? Like a new view for that specific content type, just for that top portion, which is the header. And then doing that, you can actually customize it. So the top where say Orchard Inc., bad name, but Orchard Inc. right there, that's a default template. If you scroll down of that issue, there's also another screenshot that I shared where I go up a little bit. Yeah, so you see where the logo, so that logo, that is a view I created that override the default. This is outside this PR, or it just shows how we can actually overwrite that. So in my case, my content that's called content profile actually has a media part, and media part provides me logo. So in that case, I just decided, hey, I want to put the logo there, right? So I override it.
The blog could show the description here.
Correct.
Because it's a template, so you can access the items properties.
Yes.
Interesting.
I mean, if you look at the file,
you're not very good at demos because you don't know how to sell the thing. If you had told me that, I would have said, yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, I guess I'm not that good at selling you.
Okay. Well, it's recorded. I hope people will look at it. I like it. I'm fine with that. I understand. I'm buying the approach that you can use the containers properties to customize this header.
Well, no, you actually don't change you basically create your own template. So you're using basically alternate shapes. So you can.
But you said you can also do it. There is no admin way to define that thing instead.
Well, the admin is only one property that I'm not sure if the screenshot is here or in the PR itself, that just allow you to show the header or not.
Just a checkbox, not the template itself.
Correct. But then the template, we utilize what we have today. If you maybe scroll up, you'll see that
it's an admin template then.
Oh, it's a content. It's a click
Well, it's
on
in the admin. It has to be in the admin template.
click on the very top on the files, and you'll see the very first file change. No, I don't know what that is. Scroll down. Oh, right there. The second one say content dot. Oh, you looked at the old PR. Yeah, you don't want to look at this PR. You want to look at, there's another PR. That's a closed one. You want to look at the open one. Sorry. There's yeah, that one. Yeah, look at that file changes. And that first view, you see that content.header. So you can create content dash content type dot header, and you can overwrite that on the very first view.
Can't work, or there's a bug. It's not a, so this one may work. So you use, I'm still saying that your custom view needs to be in the admin team, because your shape, your template won't be visible in the admin if it's not from an admin team. Because if you create on the front-end team, then the shape will be only available for the front-end team and not for the admin team.
But I think ListPart is for the admin, or is there for, I'm not sure. I never used it for the
no, I mean, ListPart is also for the front-end. You can have a custom shape for ListPart for the front-end team. And you can have shapes for the admin team. But I mean, if something is found here, it's running in the admin, so only the themes, the theme from the admin can provide shapes to this. If I look at the code here, that renders that. Where is the rendering? If I go on
it's from the view, from the ListPart header, toward the middle. Scroll down in the views. A couple more down. Couple more.
I say this one. ListPart detail admin, right?
Oh, that's where the buttons, but if you scroll one more down, where it say ListPart header.css, there you go.
Display.
Yeah.
So build display model container contain. Okay, this is a display type.
Yes. So you could have a ListPart header for your front end theme as well, and then call it something other than header, or call it header.
But this is for the front end.
This is back end.
That's how you do that. You create a shape from the driver. That's it. Okay, we'll look later, but I'm confused by how it for me, has to come from an admin team. Chattery will watch the meeting and will tell us that, oh, maybe there is a bug somewhere. Oh, yes, that's true or that's wrong, and we'll understand why, but that's how we designed it. Okay, well, I would have been fine with just setting to customize. If it's customizing the admin, then maybe customize the admin with a template in the setting. Same way we have a template for auto route, we could have a template for this header. Customize it to be fine. That's interesting that we haven't done that. Or maybe we have better paths for some other parts to customize how it looks like in the admin without the theme, admin theme. Today we rely on the admin theme, but maybe we could have more portions of the UI in the admin that is customizable through templates from the admin itself instead of from a file. But if there is a file, that's fine too. That's a way to do that. It's just there is a cliff to jump from having no custom admin theme to having a custom admin theme to be able to add shapes to it for them. Okay, but I like the idea. A few details to answer so I can understand how it works, and also people to comment on that. Buttons, the position, how to customize this thing. Is it an optional setting or is it a setting with a default value and then people can customize the default value being display text, and then they can customize the template and change, no, I don't want display text, I want display text and something else, an image or property, whatever. And this way it's not a optional, it's there. There is a default template. It's just displaying the text of the title, the type right now. That could make sense also. Okay, okay. Satisfying with my comments. See you on Thursday.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.